Hello, today is June 3rd, 1988. I'm Everett, an alcoholic. I invite you to listen to a tape of the 33rd DC and 4th State get-together Friday night session. I thank you. I hope you enjoy this tape.
My name is Ken. I'm an alcoholic. Good to see everybody here. I want to thank everybody who helped to put this on, and real grateful for everybody in here. We'll open the meeting with serenity prayer, please. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. We'll have this raffle first before we have this speaker, and this raffle, as most of you know, is so as we can have another one this fall. So, and we have six prizes. We have a tape of this meeting and 5 books. So, just let somebody hold and I'll call them.
Yeah, sure.
073546. Five, 4, 6. Right back up. Five, 5, 3. There you go, Bill. Four, 5, 7. To everybody for coming here this evening, and I was talking with a couple of people before that had been coming here for a long time, and I said, old Russell, he drug my behind here a long time ago, and I didn't really have no choice about it either, either that or I'd hear it every day. Because he was just kind of type of person he was, and he seemed to think that everybody had to do something, and I wasn't really too hipped up on that, but I wanted to stay sober, so I thought, well, I'd do anything just keep his mouth shut. So, we had this ritual 2 times a year. We'd go shopping. Now I just order most of the things over the phone or go to Skinks and tell them what I want, but Russell, he liked to go shop and, and never take care of a whole evening, and pick this up and set that down, and he'd say, that's too high, and, and I thought, Lord have mercy, man, why don't you just go and buy it and get it over with? But, I guess that's what I needed, at that time, and I'm grateful for it this evening. And, can everybody hear me? Well, the reason why I said that because my lovely wife back there says she can't understand me. Can you believe that? Understand me. I think she's got some kind of a hearing problem or something. But when I came to this program, you know, I was ready to give up booze, but I've never had any problem with honest desire to drink since coming in, thanks to God's understanding. But I've had a hell of a lot of living problems, and a lot of old timers, Russell and Chris and Maggie and Jack, and they kind of pushed me along. This is the way it's got to be done, and I'd do it my way, and then I'd have to say, well, I guess they was right after all, But it took a long time, but this program has turned my life around, and today I'm glad to say that I'm a responsible person, and I feel good about that, and I feel good about being here every year and help put this thing on, and I'm extremely grateful for everybody that participates in it. And this Southern gentleman who's going to talk next, I've known him for a long time, and he's like everybody else in this room. He's a real winner, and so I'm going to turn the meeting over to Brother Bill.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill, and I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be over here tonight, and it's good to be sober. Ken was saying something about Russell, and it brought back some fond memories to me. And I remember Russell saying that he got up to talk at a meeting one night, and there was a drunk sitting in the front row. And said after he talked a minute or two, the fellow got up and said, "Hey," said, "why don't you sit down and let somebody else talk a while?" I might have to do that tonight myself. I don't know what I'm going to say. I never do. And it always remind me of a little joke that Johnny used to tell me. He said there's an old boy sitting on the sidewalk, and there's another one coming down the street, and looked at him, and the fellow was sitting there scribbling on some paper, and one of them asked him, said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm writing myself a letter." He said, "What are you saying to yourself?" He said, "How do I know? I ain't going to get it until tomorrow." So, if this tape player works, I might know what I said tomorrow. I see a lot of faces tonight I haven't seen for a long time, and it's real good to be here with you, see you again. There was people around here when I come here that taught me how to love you, taught me how to share with you, try to do my best. And that's why I'm here tonight, because I'm here to tell you a little bit about how it was with me and what happened and how it is now. My life was an interesting life to me. I enjoyed living for a long time. When I was a kid, I had a mother and father that I thought a lot of, and I felt like they loved me, and they took me to church and Sunday school, and I sang in the choir, and I enjoyed living. And it was kind of bad days in those times. It was a depression time when I was a kid. And when they dressed me up in a pair of beer overalls and a blue denim shirt and sent me to school, I felt like I was one of the biggest fellows that was there. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed life. My father run a store, and there used to be fellows that come around all the time at night and sat and played music and told lies, and it was a good time. Everybody enjoyed themselves. Maybe I learned how to lie with some of them fellows, I don't know. But I told my share of them in my time, and I'm going to try not to tell you none tonight if I can help it. And that's going to be a hard job within itself. But I didn't drink when I was a kid. My mother gave me a taste of booze when I was 11 years old, and I thought it was the awfulest tasting stuff I ever took in my life, and I said I would never drink none of that. And so I didn't drink as a boy, and when we'd go to baseball games when I was probably 13, 14 years old, they'd have a couple cans of beer or something, and I would drink a beer with the boys, but I didn't even like that. But I never got high and never had a problem. Then I went in service, and I had been in service a while, and we were going overseas, and 3 of us boys went downtown one night in Kansas City, and we went down and thought we would see who could drink the most, because we figured we wasn't coming home, and so we was going to have a big time for one big party before we went overseas. And we went in a bar, and that first drink I took in that bar was just like the one that I took that my mother had given me when I was a kid. It tasted awful. But the second one tasted very good. And the third one was great. And this country boy became a city boy. And we stayed until the bar closed, and then we went to a movie after the bar had closed up, and we were going upstairs in the balcony, and I heard a bottle drop out of my pocket where we had bought a bottle to carry with us. And I went back downstairs to pick up the bottle, and the next thing I remembered, I woke up in a young lady's apartment with my britches laying on her cook stove with the leg burnt off. I'm not sure my drinking ever got any better. But there was a long time after that I did drink, and I didn't have a problem. At least I don't think I had a problem. I went overseas, and I was pinned down when I first got overseas, and we were pinned down for 5 days and nights, and I was scared to death. I think I was the scariest fellow that's ever been across the water. But anyway, after we got out of the trenches, and I went into Cherbourg, and we went into wine cellars, and we found cognac, and we found champagne, and we found all the things that they had to drink. And for the next 10.5 months, I was in combat, active combat, and I drank every day. I carried 5 long neck wine bottles in my pack, so that I wouldn't run out of something to drink. And I look back at that today, and I feel like that was a help to me. I don't think that I could have done the things that I did overseas if I had not had alcohol. I came home, and I came home as a proud young man. I had 4 Bronze Stars and 3 Purple Hearts. I had 204 combat days, 4 major campaigns, and I felt real good about myself when I came home. And I came home, and it wasn't long after being home that I got lonely, and I didn't know what to do. So I had met a girl when I was in service. It was in Ohio, and I decided that I would go back to see her, and I did, and it wound up us getting married. And for about 6 or 7 years, I never took a drink. We never went with people. We never went places where people drink, and I never felt that I ever had any need to drink. I really never thought much about drinking. I was interested in trying to build a home and wanted a family and was looking for the better things in life. Then I started taking a drink with the boys on the job, and that drink got to be 2, and then 2 drinks got to be a pint. And it got to be that I was drinking 2 pints of Old Dover every afternoon after we got off from work. And that seemed to be doing fine. But it seemed like the wife got bossy, and she began to argue. And I began to look at the girls down the street. They got prettier. She got older, and I got younger. And I became a rambling drunk. and I would come home and kick up a racket and leave. And she'd argue with me and try to get me to stay at home, and she'd follow me and everything else, and I was trying to tell her not let that door hit her when she left, and I couldn't get her to leave. I tried everything, I know that. And so it went on that way for a little while, and I got crazier and crazier, and so along about 1965, my mother and my wife ganged up on me, and they decided they were going to have something done with me. I had lost my driving license a year before that, and so I had decided not to work because I couldn't drive, and if you couldn't drive, there was no job worth having. That's the way I felt. So I took a 15-month vacation, and during that time, all I did was drink, and I had gone completely insane, really. And my mother and wife decided they would try to have something done about it. So they had me picked up and put in jail, and the judge sent me to Western State. At that time, Western State didn't have no kind of treatment. All they had was somewhere to lock you up and dry you out, and they locked you up with the rest of the loonies. And so I wound up with the loonies eating beans for breakfast with my fingers. And I didn't know it then, but I was exactly where I belonged. I stayed in the Western State Hospital for 4 days and nights before I knew where I was at. And they had put me in a tight room, and I was seeing spiders and cats and trying to crawl through keyholes and all these good things. And they let me out after I'd been up for 4 days and nights. They were shooting formaldehyde and Librium in my rear end, all they could give me. And I had come to, and they took me to a window, and they showed me a man in Western State that they had brought there 17 years before that. And they told me, they said, "You have been exactly like this man for the last 4 days and nights." And I thought to myself, if I ever had a problem with drinking like that, I would quit. And I stayed in Western State for 30 days, and they let me out, and I came home, and I picked up a drink before I got home. 60 days later, I was riding down the road one evening with my wife, and I wanted her to stop and pick a fella up, and she wouldn't do it, so I pushed her out the car with the car running. And she sent my tail back to Western State. But it seemed like nothing was going to stop me from drinking or even make me think about stopping drinking. About 3 years before I came to AA, I decided that I would never tell nobody again that I was going to quit drinking, because I knew I wasn't. I didn't even want to quit. So I just kept drinking, and I had been sent down to the suicidal ward in Richmond, down to McGuire Hospital. And they picked me up and put me in jail because I had drank on Antabuse that they had given me at the Wilson Club, sitting up here at Charlottesville. I had been up to see a psychiatrist, and they put me on Antabuse, and before they put me on Antabuse, I had been going it once a week, and every time I would go up to see them, they would say to me, they'd say, "Bill, can't you ever come up here without drinking?" And I'd tell them the truth. I said, "No, and you couldn't either if you had my wife." And so I kept drinking, and I kept going up there, and so they put me on Antabuse, and one afternoon it was hot, and I decided that, maybe a half a beer wouldn't hurt me, even though I was on Antabuse. So I stopped and got myself a beer, and I drank a little bit of that beer, and I happened to look at the mirror on the pickup as I went back to the truck, and my face had turned firehouse red. And so was a bootlegger, lived up the road about 100 yards. So I jumped in the truck and run up to the bootlegger, and he come running out, and he said, "Fella, what in the world's wrong with you?" I said, "Give me a drink quick, will you? I'm sick." And I was sick. And he bought out a pint, and I drank about a fourth of it, and my heart quit beating, went running, and the next thing I remember, I woke up in jail, and the judge let me out and put me in my wife's custody to send me down to Richmond to the McGuire Hospital. So I had to get a fifth before I could go down there. So she got me a drink, and I headed for down to McGuire, and I got down to McGuire, and I walked in, and the man at the desk said, "We don't take drunks in here." And I started to walk out, and he says, "Do you ever have any suicidal tendencies?" I said, "Yes, I'm thinking about it right now." So they hoisted me up, and they carried me down and put me in the suicidal ward. And if you haven't been there, you don't want to go. I didn't know that many people cut the throat. But I got out, and I was going to the hospital over in Washington, D.C. And I was going, and I come home, and my wife would say, "What they say was the matter with you?" And I would tell her that they told me one side of my stomach's eating up the other side. They didn't diagnose me that way, but that's what I thought was wrong. So she went down to see about that. And she carried me with her. And we walked in, and we talked to the head doctor in the hospital over Washington, and the doctor said, "Well, really, we can't find nothing wrong with him except a little gastritis. But said, if it's any help for this man, you might try AA." And we come home. And so she went to AA. I didn't need it. So she come home, and she brought that little 12-step card. And she sat down and she read it out loud and looked around at me real pitiful. She said, "You can't do that anyhow." And I agreed with her. So she went back to the meeting the next week, and she come home and she says, "Why don't you go down to a meeting with me?" I said, "What they got down there?" She said, "They got the medicine you need." I said, "Go down and get something, bring it home." I guess she did. Because on Sunday evening, 2 drunks come in my yard. And there hadn't been nobody in my yard for a long time. Because I was a strange kind of a fella. I might hug you and I might shoot you. But they come in, and I peeked out the door, and I saw there was 2 fellows that I had drink with, and but they was in a new automobile, and they was both dressed in suits, and there wasn't nothing in my house in those days except things that I couldn't throw out, like the cook stove. And they came in, and they propped themselves around here and there, and they started talking, and they talked about a little bit of everything, just like old times, and I was really kind of anxious for them to leave so I could give myself a drink. But anyway, they got ready to leave. One of them said, "I haven't had a drink for 2 months." And the other one said, "I haven't had a drink for 4 months." Said, "We're going to AA meeting Tuesday night. Would you like to go?" And my alcoholic mind went into gear, and I said, "Man, these birds are going out to get on a drunk." And they tried to tell my wife, calm my wife, and I said, "I'll go." I said, "Yeah." So I come to AA thinking I was going to get drunk. And we walked in the meeting that night, and I thank God every day for those old boys. I can't tell you what a feeling it gives me when I think about them. They were all sitting around the table. All of them got up, shook my hand, said, "Bill, it's good to see you." And they said, "We're going to talk a little bit." And I wanted to talk right away, and they said, "You just sit here and listen, and when we get done, we're going to See what you got to say. And they sat down and all of them shared about their lives. And I sat there and I listened to them. And I compared, I just said, none of them suit me, you know. They had this one fellow, I think, today, was probably the cause of me coming back to the meeting. Had a fellow called Fritz. And Fritz told about being in a nudist colony. And Fritz said that three of him and two girls had got in the car and forgot to put the clothes on and gone down to Alexandria to get some whiskey. And they said they had got locked up. I think I went back next week to see if he was going to say anything more about that. Because he was talking my language. There was people here that talked my language. And so the next night I went down to Fredericksburg and I met two of the dearest people I ever will meet. One of them was a nurse from New York. Some of you might have known Grace. She was around here for many years. And she shared with me like a mother. And another one was a fellow that was a lawyer that finally alcohol killed him. But he told me that night about his drinking, and I have never heard anybody tell a story that ever compared close to his story. I've heard some horrible drinking stories in my life, but nothing compared to him. But I heard those, and I went home and still had no intentions of stopping drinking. And the third night I went to Manassas, and Charlie L. talked. And some of you have heard Charlie L. But Charlie L. is the man that I related to know that I was in the right place. Charlie talked about going to a psychiatrist, and he said the psychiatrist asked him, Charlie said, what do you do when you get up in the morning? He said, oh my. Said then they asked him, said, what's the next thing you do? Said, I smoke a cigarette. Said he asked him, said, what would you do, said, if I stick both fingers in your eyes? Said, I couldn't see. He said, what would you do if I cut your ears off? Charlie said, I couldn't see. He said, what do you mean you couldn't see? He said, my hat would fall down on my eyes. Charlie said, the psychiatrist said, did you wet the bed when you was a child? He said, still do. I knew I was home when I heard that. But I found a bunch of people in these rooms that I loved. And I felt like that they accepted me, and I felt like they loved me and they cared about me. And for just through a miracle, I kept coming back. And I run into old Johnny. I had Dave for my first sponsor. Dave never got sober. I watched Dave pass away from alcoholism. He'd been around this program for 20-some years. And I think everybody had been around had tried to help Dave, but there's some that don't make it, and I'm glad I know that. But Dave was my first sponsor, and he used to bring me booze, and we'd drink together. And he'd walk around carrying his pants on his leg, on his arm, because he never wanted to get his pants dirty when he drank. And I used to tell him how stupid he was. And we'd go to meetings, and he'd drink terpene codeine, and he'd cuss everybody that he could see. But we had a lot of good times, and he was a great help to me coming to AA and helping me to get sober. I remember after I once sobered up, he asked me one time, he said, Bill, how do you do it? And I answered him as honest as I know how. I don't know. I can't tell you yet tonight why I'm standing here sober when I think about the ones that I've seen go by the way. All I know is, but for the grace of God, there goes me. I feel like tonight I'm a miracle. I don't think it's anything I've ever done that I deserve to be sober and to be up here sharing with you. I never did anything to earn it. It's a gift. And a gift that I could never comprehend in my wildest dream would ever happen to me. You know, I was a fellow that had nowhere to go, had no friends. I was out behind in my house in the Pines in my last drinking days, as crazy as any rabbit. I used to run out in the road and try to flag traffic out through the field, 2 o'clock in the morning, with my shorts on. I used to go to my neighbor's house and peck on the door because I would be so lonely I wouldn't know what way to do. I wouldn't know what to do. And I would have nowhere to go, and I'd look for a light, and I'd go to that light. And I would ask some just little simple questions, because in my mind I was thinking, wonder if these people love me. And I would peck on that door, and they would say, go on away, Mill. You don't do nothing for me. And the next morning I would get a notice by the sheriff, don't come on my property no more. I still got a stack of notices at home. Everybody in my neighborhood had sent me a notice, don't come on my property, because I was a dangerous, crazy drunk. I had broke down a few doors. People would call me the next morning and say, come fix my door. If you don't, I'm going to call the sheriff and have you put in jail. And I would go try to fix those doors, and I would be so sick and I would be in such terrible shape that the people would look at me and they'd say, just go on, leave it alone. But I had reached a place in my life where there was nothing to live for. And I didn't want to live no way. And I was just hoping every time that I would get drunk that I wouldn't wake back up. And I was coming to AA, and Dave was bringing me. And they had an old black boy called Broadus that fell in line, and Broadus started coming to meetings. And he used to sit by my bed when I'd come off them drunks and shake his head. He said, I just don't see what makes you do that. But they didn't give up on me, and Johnny, I got a hold of Johnny, and Johnny started coming, and he'd come to my house 2 or 3 times a day. And he did that not just for a year or a month. He did it for 7, 8 years. 2 or 3 times every day. Johnny ain't doing too good right now. He had a stroke, and I've been going to see him. Can't do much for him, but I enjoy seeing him, being with him. I went 2 or 3 days ago, and I said to him, I said, Johnny, how you feeling? He looked up at me and he said, he easy does it. Can't hardly move his hands, feet. Can't hardly move his eyes. So he said to me, he said, I'm going to get out of here. I said, you get out of here, we're going to some more meeting. He said, that's what it takes. He hadn't forgot AA. I love the old man because he has given me things that probably nobody else ever could. He used to sit me in the table, and I'd sit my bottle in the middle of the table. And I'd ask him to have a drink. He'd reach for it, kidding with me, and I'd reach up and take both hands and pull it away from him. Of course, I didn't want to see him drink, most especially my whiskey. But he kept coming every day, and For 2.5 years, I kept drinking, and there was people around these rooms that kept telling me, if you're an alcoholic, it don't get no better, just worse. And I kept thinking, well, it can't get no worse. And I kept trying to stop drinking on willpower. I would go down to the meeting, and I would see Marvin and some of the old timers around Fredericksburg, and I would decide in my head, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So I'd pull my whiskey out, and I'd take my beer and I'd throw it over beside the building, and I would come home, and Johnny would let me out the car, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would find myself going up the hill to a bootlegger, and I would be shaking and trembling, and for some reason I had to go. I just couldn't quit. Finally, I got dried out for about 3 months. I think it was Pete that I heard talking about. He got dry for 3 months. But anyway, I drank again, and I went down to put a gas tank in a service station one day, and the fellow was sitting there. He hadn't had a drink for 16 months. And he sent uptown, he got a Social Security check, and he sent uptown, he got a fifth. Said he deserved a drink. And I was sitting there, and he asked me to have a drink, and I was bragging to him, no, I wouldn't do that. I'm in AA, and I don't drink no more. Went to a meeting that night over to Warrenton, and there's a fellow there from Gainesville that he was a dynamite man. He called me out after the meeting. I was telling all these people about what I had done, and he called me over to the side after the meeting, and he said, Bill, if I was you, I wouldn't be bragging about not taking that drink. So he made me angry. So I left and went and got drunk at him. He'd been sober for 5 years, and soon after that he got drunk. He didn't make it back. I've had so many signposts in front of me in this journey in AA. But for 2.5 years I kept trying to drink, and my last drunk, which I hope is the last one I'll ever have, I found out what it was to be powerless over alcohol. I had been dry about 6 months, and me and another boy was going down the road one afternoon, and he went, stopped and got 6 beer. And he said to me, he says, Bill, have a beer. I said, no, thank you. I'm in AA, I don't drink. We rode on down the road a little ways, and all of a sudden my brain turned over. My brain went into gear. They tell me that's dangerous if you're an alcoholic. But anyway, my brain says, you know a beer won't hurt you. I said, no, I can't do that. We rode on a little further. My brain said, Bill, you're 46 years old. You know damn well you can take a drink. But one beer ain't gonna hurt you. I talked back to it that time. I said, you might be right. I looked at that beer, and I looked at the boy driving the car, and I said, I believe I will take one of them. I turned the beer up and drank the beer. Rode right on down the road to the lady's house that we had an oil tank on a truck for. She came to the door, and I said to her, I said, lady, I got an oil tank on this truck to put up for you. Said, if you got something to drink, I'm going to put it up. If you ain't, I got to go. I said, well, one can of beer did for this alcoholic. And she found something to drink, and I don't know to yet today whether we put the oil tank up or not. Next morning, I come to in jail, and I had my belt on the bars of the jail, and I was trying to hang myself with my belt. And I didn't want to live no more. I didn't have anything to live for. I really didn't want to live. And I didn't know no way to die. Johnny and my wife, they come that morning, they got me out of jail. And we went home. And for about the next 2 weeks, I was like a caged lion. I just walked in my yard and in the house. And I really didn't know what I thought or what I was doing or nothing. I was just like in a trance, like. Old Johnny would come by 2 or 3 times every day. He'd sit and have a cup of coffee, he'd get up and leave. And every day he'd say to me, he said, "Want to go to the meeting?" Nope. And I was full of guilt and remorse and depression. I was just eat up. So one night he said, "Pete, want to see you down in Manassas," and I went with Johnny. We went to Manassas, and Jim G was talking, and Jim G had been around the program for 17 to 18 years, and he'd never been able to be sober for as much as a year. And in my mind, I thought, my God, I don't want to be like that. So for the first time in my life, I decided to listen, to try to find out something that people was trying to tell me. And I thank God there was people around here that kept it simple for this alcoholic. They told me this was a simple program for complicated people. And they told me to keep it simple, and they told me it's not near as serious as you think it is. Just don't drink, come to meeting, it'll get better. I went down to Fredericksburg a little later than that. I run into Marvin, and Marvin said, "If you believe in anything any bigger than you are, say a little prayer in the morning." I didn't really have no faith in nothing and didn't really believe in anything because I had prayed and prayed and I had beat on my pillows and I had wondered why things got so bad and I was so miserable. But because he said it, I did it. I can't begin to tell you tonight what that little prayer has meant in my life. I sat around these tables and I heard them talking about the first step in this program. I heard them talking about the program. I've heard them discuss almost any and everything that you could think about. And I'm real grateful that every Tuesday night they had a 12-step meeting at Warrenton that I went to, have been going to ever since I've been around the program. Because it's been the thing that saved my life. These steps is where life is at. That's where I've been able to learn to enjoy being Bill. I have learned to be Bill. Joe over to Luray used to tell me all the time when I first come around, he said, "Bill, you'll never love nobody until you can love yourself." He said, "You're not capable of loving nobody." I used to think the man was crazy. I thought all my life that I loved my mother and I loved a lot of people. I thought, I stayed around this program and I got into these steps and I found out Joe was right. I never loved Bill. I treated Bill like trash. Some people sitting around these tables said God didn't make no trash. God loves you. They told me that. I had heard all these things in church, and I thought they was fine for other people. But what I didn't know was that I didn't understand. When I came to AA, I found people that understood that I didn't understand. And they were the people I needed to hear to change this alcoholic brain that I got. And the only way that I could do that was to get to me through my heart. I found people that spoke the language of the heart around these rooms. And I was able to share with these people. And I began to think that they was getting better. I never dreamed that I was getting better. I came here for a long time. The first step for me was a learning step. I never knew what it meant when they said my life was unmanageable, or they said their lives was unmanageable. I knew what a bottle of drink would do for me. I knew it was the first drink that was going to get me going. I kept coming back, and I didn't really believe there was anything wrong with my sanity. But when I started talking about the things in my life that had happened to me in my drinking days, and things that had happened even when I wasn't drinking, I realized I wasn't really all that smart. And I began to believe that if I would come to meetings and not drink, that my mind would get better along with my body. And I knew my feelings was getting better. And I kept coming here and I kept talking to the boys that had been here before me, and I used to go eat ice cream with Teet just about every Tuesday night. Teet used to tell me, he said, "Bill, keep it simple." And I used to ask him about this third step. I said, you mean I got to go back to church and I got to do all those things I've already done? He said, "Bill, keep it simple. God will find you. You just don't drink come meeting." I took my last drink the 14th day of November in 1970. In the following spring, I walked out behind my house one evening, and one morning, and I went down through the bottom, and I saw 200 or 300 robins in a little meadow. Maybe it had an acre. And it seemed to me that every one of those robins was looking straight at me. And they were beautiful. The grass had just got green, the sun was shining, it was in the early morning. And I stopped right in my tracks. I didn't take another step. And I looked out and I looked at those birds, and I said, how great God is in my mind. For the first time in my life, I had a personal contact with God as I understand Him. I made a decision that morning that whatever looked after those robins and whatever sent them back and forth wherever they went and come was what I wanted to look after me. Today, I'm sure that's my life. You see, to me, AA is just a bunch of robins, and I'm one of you. And I try to go and come with you, because you're where my strength's at. You're where my heart's at. You're where my mind's at. You're my way of life. I live today, and I enjoy my life. It's a great pleasure. I got around to the fourth step in this program, and for a long time I sat around and wouldn't take a step. I said, I don't need it. And I heard Ted saying one night, he said, if you're afraid, you're afraid of yourself. And I decided, because I was afraid, I was going home at night, and I was afraid the cattle would get in the road, and I was afraid everything was going to happen. And I decided, because he said that I would try to write a fourth step. And I can guarantee you there was nothing complicated about it. Probably the simplest one anybody ever wrote, because I didn't know how to write one, and still don't. But I did my best, and I took a look at me, and I saw a lot of things about myself. And I tried to talk about them. And Boyd used to say that he never told nobody his fifth step, he just passed it around. And I passed mine around. And everywhere I tried to carry it, and everywhere that I tried to pass it, I found people that wanted to hear more. They accepted me, and they gave me the right to my own opinion, and they gave me the right to my own life. I don't know how to tell you how God has become a part in my life. All I know to tell you today, where I was full of hatred and jealousy and selfishness and anger and envy, today I love you. I don't have any fears that control me now. When they told me a day at a time, it was a long time, though I could feel like that I could live a day at a time. Today I feel like one day is all I can handle. They told me to let go and let God. And I said, how do you do that? Today, I know how you do it. You stop fighting life. You drop the rock. Took me a long time to learn that around these rooms. I don't have anything to prove to you tonight or anybody else. I just simply want to be the best human being that I know how to be. And I try to do that, and I know that I need you to help me to be that person. I can't do that by myself. I went to a meeting when I first came into AA where these traditions were practiced. They wasn't just something that was hung up on the wall. They were practiced. And somebody told me that your sobriety is no stronger than the group that you've got for your home group. I believe that. What I know tonight, I learned in these rooms. I learned from people that had a program, and not only had a program, that lived a program. And they honored those traditions. You know, it's a tradition here that says, let me look and see. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, the loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. That's what's been happening to me for a long time now. I came around these meetings, and when I came here, most everything that people said didn't make much sense. And all along the way, there's been little lights turning on in my head. I sit around these tables and I think, I've got this terrible problem, and what am I going to do about it? And I sit here and I listen, and I realize that it's all taken care of. I've got, like Meade said when I come here, he says, don't drink, say a little prayer, go to meetings, and you'll have what you need. And I thought the man was crazy. Tonight, I think probably he was the smartest man I ever met in my life. I've been here now, going on 18 years, and I haven't had a need. To me, that's a miracle. But I can't fight it. I heard Vaughn say one time in Charlottesville, he said, to accept is to receive freely as a gift. All my life, I said I accepted this, that, and the other. And I realized when that man said that, I had never accepted anything in my life. I've been given my whole life, each day when I woke up, one day at a time. And every day I ever got up until I found this program and had been around here for a good long time, I've kept telling myself what I've got to do. I got to get up. I got to eat. I got to work. Everything in my life was a guy got to. I heard Vaughn say that, and I went home and I thought about it, and I started trying to look at my day as being a gift and having a choice, that God loved me and was giving me a choice as to how I wanted to live my day. Changed my whole world. There's no got to. There were people told me that when I came into this program. No got to's in AA. It's want to. App used to say, if you want to be sober, you will be sober. Used to make me mad every time a man would say it. I know tonight what he was saying. Life is just full of want to. You are what you want to be. And God loves us enough that He lets us be just that. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for letting me share. I'll always love you, and I'll always love this program. Thank you.